The sociology of scientific knowledge is the study of science as a social activity, especially dealing with the social conditions and effects of science, and with the social structures and processes of scientific activity. The sociology of scientific ignorance is complementary to the sociology of scientific knowledge. The sociology of knowledge, by contrast, focuses on the production of non-scientific ideas and social constructions. Sociologists of scientific knowledge study the development of a scientific field and attempt to identify points of contingency or interpretative flexibility where ambiguities are present. Such variations may be linked to a variety of political, historical, cultural or economic factors. Crucially, the field does not set out to promote relativism or to attack the scientific project. The aim of the researcher is to explain why one interpretation, rather than another, succeeds due to external social and historical circumstances. The field emerged in the late 1960s and early 1970s and at first was an almost exclusively British practice. Other early centers for the development of the field were in France, Germany, and the United States. Major theorists include Barry Barnes, David Bloor, Sal Riestiver, Randall Collins, Gaston Bachelard, Harry Collins, Paul Feyerabend, Steve Fuller, Thomas Kuhn, Martin Kusch, Bruno Latour, Mike Mulcahy, Derek J. Desola Price, Lucia Suchman and Anselm Strauss. Programs and schools. The sociology of scientific knowledge in its Anglophone versions emerged in the 1970s in self-conscious opposition to the sociology of science, associated with the American Robert K. Merton, generally considered one of the seminal authors in the sociology of science. Merton's was a kind of sociology of scientists, which left the cognitive content of science out of sociological account. SSK, by contrast, aimed at providing sociological explanations of scientific ideas themselves, taking its lead from aspects of the work of Thomas S. Kuhn, but especially from established traditions in cultural anthropology as well as the later Wittgenstein. David Bloor, one of SSK's early champions, has contrasted the so-called weak program, which merely gives social explanations for erroneous beliefs, with what he called the strong program, which considers sociological factors as influencing all beliefs. The weak program is more of a description of an approach than an organized movement. The term is applied to historians, sociologists and philosophers of science who merely cite sociological factors as being responsible for those beliefs that went wrong. Imre Lakatos and Thomas Kuhn might be said to adhere to it. The strong program is particularly associated with the work of two groups: the Edinburgh School in the 1970s and 80s, and the Bath School in the same period. Edinburgh sociologists and Bath sociologists promoted, respectively, the strong program and empirical program of relativism. Also associated with SSK in the 1980s was discourse analysis as applied to science, as well as a concern with issues of reflexivity arising from paradoxes relating to SSK's relativist stance towards science and the status of its own knowledge claims. The sociology of scientific knowledge has major international networks through its principal associations, 4S and EASST, with recently established groups in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan and Latin America. It has made major contributions in recent years to a critical analysis of the biosciences and informatics. The sociology of mathematical knowledge. Studies of mathematical practice and quasi-empiricism in mathematics are also rightly part of the sociology of knowledge, since they focus on the community of those who practice mathematics and their common assumptions. Since Eugene Weiner raised the issue in 1960 and Hilary Putnam made it more rigorous in 1975, the question of why fields such as physics and mathematics should agree so well has been debated. Proposed solutions point out that the fundamental constituents of mathematical thought, space, form, structure, and number proportion are also the fundamental constituents of physics. It is also worthwhile to note that physics is nothing but a modeling of reality, and seeing causal relationships governing repeatable observed phenomena, and much of mathematics, especially in relation to the growth of the calculus, has been developed precisely for the goal of developing these models in a rigorous fashion. Another approach is to suggest that there is no deep problem, that the division of human scientific thinking through using words such as mathematics and physics is only useful in the practical everyday function to categorize and distinguish. Fundamental contributions to the sociology of mathematical knowledge have been made by Sal Riestiver and David Bloor. Riestiver draws upon the work of scholars such as Oswald Spengler, Raymond L. Wilder and Leslie A. White, as well as contemporary sociologists of knowledge and science studies scholars. David Bloor draws upon Ludwig Wittgenstein and other contemporary thinkers. They both claim that mathematical knowledge is socially constructed and has irreducible contingent and historical factors woven into it. The Sokal affair. The Sokal affair, also known as the Sokal hoax, was a publishing hoax perpetrated by Alan Sokal, a physics professor at New York University. In 1996, Sokal submitted an article to Social Texts, an academic journal of postmodern cultural studies. In subsequent publications, Sokal claimed that the submission was an experiment to test the journal's intellectual rigor and, specifically, to investigate whether such a journal would publish an article liberally salted with nonsense if it sounded good and flattered the editor's ideological preconceptions. The article, transgressing the boundaries towards the transformative hermeneutics of quantum gravity, published in the Social Texts Spring-Summer 1996 Science Wars issue, proposed that quantum gravity is a social and linguistic construct. At that time, the journal did not practice academic peer review and did not submit the article for outside expert review by a physicist. On its date of publication, Sokal revealed in lingua franca that the article was a hoax, identifying it as a pastiche of left-wing cant, fawning references, grandiose quotations, and outright nonsense, structured around the silliest quotations by postmodernist academics he could find about mathematics and physics. The resultant academic and public quarrels concerned the scholarly merit of humanistic commentary about the physical sciences, the influence of postmodern philosophy on social disciplines in general, academic ethics, including whether Sokal was right or wrong to deceive the editors and readers of Social Texts, and whether the journal had exercised the appropriate intellectual rigor before publishing the pseudo-scientific article. Criticism. SSK has received criticism from theorists of the French School of Science and Technology Studies, actor network theory. These theorists criticize SSK for sociological reductionism and a human-centered universe. SSK, they say, relies too heavily on human actors and social rules and conventions settling scientific controversies. The debate is discussed in an article, Epistemological Chicken.